Okay, this is the EE 5 through 7 review packet. We're going to start with EE 5, which is comparing proportional relationships. You can find these written in the form of y equal mx because the y-intercept would be 0, so you don't have to write a plus 0 there. When we're talking about proportional relationships, we're going to compare the slope, which we can also call rate of change. Put a little dot beside these. We could also call this the unit rate when we're dealing with proportional relationships. And we're specifically looking at m, the slope. So we're going to look at problem number 2. What is the unit rate, which we just said was m, for the proportional relationship represented by this equation? Well, this equation is in the form of y equal m times x. And so we're just replacing m with 4/5. That is the slope. Answer choice A. Number 5, Lise can type 40 words a minute. That seems important. The graph represents Ty's typing speed. Who has the faster typing speed? Well, we just saw that Lise types 40 words per minute, and Ty's speed is represented in this graph. So looking at Ty's speed, we see that 60 seconds, 1 minute, he types 40 words. So he is also typing 40 words per minute. So who has the faster speed? Neither. They're equal. Number 8, the table shows the height of a skier on a hill. How fast is the skier descending the hill? Well, we see that we're given the times in minutes and the feet for the height at each time represented. And we just need to really figure out the rate of change, because how fast is the skier descending? This is asking for the rate of change, which is just slope. So I can find slope a couple different ways, but when I'm looking at a table, the easiest way is to compare the change of the y's divided by the change of the x's, where x is time and y is the height in this case. And so I'm going to pick any two ordered pairs. I think I'm going to use the first two ordered pairs, and I'm going to compare the height and say, okay, from 5,280 feet to 3,960 feet, it goes down 1,320 feet. So the change of my y is 1,320. And then looking at the time in minutes, it goes from 1.5 minutes to 3 minutes, so it's an increase of 1.5 or 1.5 minutes. And now we're just going to divide to get that rate of change, and we get this value, negative 880. And what that means is that the skier descends 880 feet per minute. That negative tells us that it's dropping, so that's why we could just write the word descend instead of use a negative sign. Number 10 asks which pair has equivalent unit rates. So we're just going to find the unit rate for every one of these and figure out if they're equal or not. So the first one, I can find any point on this graph. I think I'm going to pick this point, 410. I'm going to take my cost and divide by pounds because this is y divided by x. And a unit rate, since this is like 7th grade where we said k is y divided by x, we could just work it out that way. Or it's the same thing as saying the slope in a proportional relationship is y divided by x. Either way, we get that $10 is 4 pounds, which is $2.50 per pound. For the second part, we have a table. And I would probably just go ahead and use the method that we've used of finding that m, the rate of change, is the change of y divided by the change of x. So if we look at the change of y, I'll do these middle two values. From $11.25 to $15.75, it increases $4.50. The change of x from 5 to 7 pounds is it increases 2. And 450 divided by 2 is $2.25 per pound. Now, these two values are not equivalent, so choice A does not work. For choice B, we see that we have this equation already given, and so the slope is $7.85. We don't know what it's talking about, so we don't really know what to say it's for. But the second part, we have this graph, and we see we can pick any of these values and say, okay, the y divided by the x. So y divided by x is 20 divided by 4, and we get 5. So whatever this is representing, I don't know if it's money or not, but they were different, so these are not equivalent. Choice C, we can work this one out using the method that we had talked about with graphs, with tables, with the table, and said, okay, the slope on this table, we're going to see the change here from $85.80 to $171.60. We get an increase of $85.80, so I'm just going to place 85.8. And then the number of days increases from 3 to 6, which is an increase of 3 days. And so that comes out to $28.60 per day. And over here in our equation, we see that the slope is 85.80. So those are different numbers. $85.80 per day is a different value from $26.80, so that one is not equivalent. For our last two values on choice D, they're both in graph form, and we see that for 1 dozen on the first graph, it cost $4, so $4 per dozen. On our second graph, we have that 10 dozen are $40, so if we said $40 divided by 10 dozen, we get $4 per dozen. So these are equivalent, and answer choice D works. Standard EE6 is focused on slope equations. They're in the form of y equal mx plus b, where m is slope and b is y-intercept. Number 2 asks, what is the slope of the line that passes through these points? So I'm going to start with noting we have an equation for this, the slope formula. M is equal to the change of the y's, which we can show by taking the second y and subtracting the first, divided by the second x subtracting the first. And then we can label these and say, okay, this is the first ordered pair, so I'm going to label it x sub 1, y sub 1 as the first ordered pair. Then we have our second ordered pair, so I'm labeling it x sub 2, y sub 2 as the second ordered pair. I'm going to plug into the formula, and I'm going to note that my formula is subtracting between the y's and then subtracting between the x's. So y sub 2 was 110 minus y sub 1 was 50. X sub 2 was 80 minus x sub 1 was 25. And we'll simplify this. We get 60 over 55, and that further reduces to 12 over 11, and I could write that as 1 and 1/12, but my answer choice B matched this form, and slope we're often going to leave as an improper fraction. Number 4, the cost of joining a gym includes an initial fee of $25, it's like a starting amount, and then $2 per visit. That amount's repeated every visit. Which linear equation represents the cost of visiting the gym x times? Well, one thing that we would notice when we see a word like initial, that's the starting point, and we're talking about the initial value, b, the y-intercept. And when you see a repeated amount, you see something like per, it's indicating repetition. So it's $2 every visit, so it's repeated over and over. That's slope, or rate of change. So in our equation, y equal mx plus b in slope-intercept form, we're just going to plug in m is 2 and b is 25. And this matches answer choice D. Number 5 and 6 both are talking about this graph. Number 5 asks for the y-intercept. The y-intercept is where it intercepts the y-axis. In this case, the line intercepts the y-axis here at -3. So we have that b is -3. Now, the second part asks you to write the equation in slope-intercept form. So we need M and B. We've already got B. Let's get M, the y-intercept. So the y-intercept from a graph, we could use rise over run. We could call this the change of y divided by the change of x. Either method is fine. I'm going to pick a point that the line clearly goes through. I'm going to choose this point 4, 3. And I've already got the y-intercept, so I'm going to count how many points was the rise, what was the change in the y. So it goes up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 places that it increases. And then for the run, the x value, it goes to the right 1, 2, 3, 4 places. It's important we know that it's going to the right because that's going to be an increase. The x value goes up to the right. It goes from an x value of 0 to an x value of 4. And so we get positive 4, which means our slope reduces to 3/2. So for number 6, write the equation in slope-intercept form. Y equal 3/2 x minus 3. Number 13 is a different question from one we've seen this year. It says, which pair of triangles can be used to determine the slope of the same line? So I just want to find the one that has the same line for the hypotenuse of this right triangle. And that's choice A. None others have the same line. So if you look through these other ones, you see the slope for B, it's not the same line. For C, it's not the same line. For D, they're parallel to each other, but they're not going to follow the same line.